What's up guys, JTM Off-Road here. Today's video we're going to be talking about the life of my Jeep before YouTube. So I've been really wanting to do this video for a while now. I've tossed around the idea of how I wanted to do it. I settled on something and here it is. So the Jeep has really helped me, I guess, as a person tremendously, and discovering a new hobby, I guess. So before the Jeep, I've always had an interest in vehicles, working on vehicles, but never quite so much had the know-how. And my goal was to eventually get a Jeep that I would use off-road, and I've kind of talked about this before in a video previously. But I really wanted a Jeep to go off-roading in and use it more as a second vehicle so I could work on it in my spare time and kind of learn things that I could use with normal daily, everyday vehicle knowledge. I would say it pretty much worked out. This video is going to cover pretty much my progression of learning a lot of stuff. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. So when I first bought the Jeep, it was back in 2014, 6 years ago. When I bought the Jeep, I specifically wanted a 1995 YJ. I wanted something with leaf springs that would be easy to lift because I didn't know a lot, and I figured that would probably be the easiest route. 95 because they had the bigger U-joints and you had the galvanized body and frame, which apparently really didn't mean anything living up here in the Rust Belt because everything just rusts anyway. The Rio Grande was just an extra added coolness, I guess. 95 is the only year that they made a Rio Grande to my knowledge. So just kind of cool. When I got it, it had the typical Jeep rust in the frame, certain spots on the tub. The other thing was the front fenders were pushed in a little bit from a little fender bender. So about the rust, there was actually a spot in the frame near the rear passenger shackle that my finger just went right through the frame, and I still bought it, but I knew somebody that would be able to help out and weld the frame at the time. I didn't know anything about welding, so he did an awesome job fixing that spot for me. After that, I wanted to take a shot at cleaning up the frame and using POR 15 to kind of get a nice undercoat to protect it. Unfortunately, I didn't know much at this time. The salesman that sold me the stuff at a body shop gave me lacquer thinner and just told me this would be fine to use, didn't sell me the other stuff, and just didn't give me a whole lot of instruction on prep. He said this would be fine, you don't need anything else. And the rust has come back, so I didn't prep well enough. So lesson learned with that. As for the fenders, it was the only other thing that was really kind of noticeable if you would look at it like something was really wrong, other than there's a little bit of rust on the windshield frame. But the fenders were pushed in at the front, and it was like the perfect spot that I could just cut them off and make flat fenders, which was exactly kind of what I wanted to do, because that would give me a little more clearance for tires, which he had included 31-inch tires with, which I know it's not big. They were big enough that they were rubbing a little bit on turns for him when he had them. So this would be perfect to kind of get started. I didn't have to do the lift quite yet, and this would provide a little bit of extra clearance in the fenders that I could do some off-roading with. This is the point where I started learning about how to use a grinder. I'm at the time, I'm 24. I've never used a grinder in my life. I mean, I guess once, but really haven't done a whole lot. So I was really excited to start using some tools and just try to figure things out. After getting all the extra metal cut away and the extra little parts taken off, I needed to cover the tires a little better. So I had found some extra metal that was given to me, and I was able to cut it down and figure out how to bolt it to the fender that it would cover the tires. When I was figuring out how wide to make the metal, I figured out that through the PA law, whatever it is, for inspections, you have to have no more than a 3-inch wide flare. So I went with 3-inch covering on it. I thought it looked great. I love the look of how this turned out. And especially for one of the first big things that I was doing to this Jeep, I thought it looked awesome. I was so proud of it. So I found some TJ flares from somebody in our club. They sold them to me really cheap, and I put them on. They turned out great. At this point, I just really wanted to get off-road with it, just do something fun, and there was a place nearby that my buddy told me about that would be good to try things out. So we went out, and you know, it wasn't anything crazy, but it was enough that made the experience of having a Jeep just really fun. There was a lot of little, you know, I guess deeper for what I had, like mud pits, you know, water holes, some hill climbs, just a little bit of trails and stuff. And I just had an absolute blast with it. I think back to this, and it was a fun time, just, you know, experiencing all these things for the first time. I think you guys will love the picture of me flexing without my front sway bar disconnected. A little while after that, there was a place that did semi-annual off-roading events. It was a small place. They did more like dirt track kind of racing, but they had some land that had area for trails through the woods, a mud pit, and other things. With this, I was able to kind of push the Jeep a little more to kind of see where its limitations were. I remember getting hung up, getting high centered on a little spot. I remember there's this one mud pit that didn't seem like it's a whole lot from the video, but people were getting stuck in it a lot, and the Jeep went through just fine. It was mainly just near the end, coming up out of the pit, that was where people were getting hung up at. That was just a really great time. I had a lot of fun doing that, and it was just, I wanted to do more of this. With the Jeep, I got a lot of new parts. When I went down to pick the Jeep up, I actually drove my S10 down at the time and absolutely filled the thing up with parts that the guy had to send back with me. And one of the parts that was in it was a windshield frame. Well, at the time, I had just broken my windshield. Rock kicked up randomly one day and just put a nice big crack down the middle of the windshield. So there was a windshield frame that was included. The windshield frame that was on the Jeep already had a bunch of rust around the side of it. And I decided this was a good point to try to replace the windshield frame. I was going to replace the windshield myself and, you know, paint the windshield frame and all that good stuff. This is where I learned where a simple job is going to take a lot longer than it's really supposed to be. So I take the windshield frame down, and underneath the windshield frame there had been a lot of water that got in and rotted out the metal dash frame. Thankfully, I caught it in time. It had started rusting out the cowl, but hadn't rusted through the cowl metal just yet. At this point, I decided I would just try to tackle everything at this point. I had some other spots in the tub that were rusting out, and I would try to patch those. So at this point, I'm still living at a place where I didn't have the garage yet, which gives me a huge appreciation from the garage that I have right now. Not a day goes by that I don't appreciate this garage. I had a big 30 or 40 foot tarp that I would wrap the Jeep up in every night while I did this project, so I didn't have a ton of water sitting in the Jeep after it rained. I'd have to pack up all my tools every day, bring them inside, stash them all behind the door, and I'd have to bring them in every night I would work on the Jeep. It would always be a 30, 35 minute, 40 minute process every time I finished working on the Jeep. Found a metal dash frame on eBay that was used. I ordered that. I had to grind that down to get all the paint off, and still had a little bit of rust on it, but it wasn't anything near as bad as what the one was before. This is where I learned how to spray paint. Not saying I'm good at it, but I know enough to not have a bunch of blotchiness and stuff. So painted the metal dash frame, painted the cowl, painted some other things. For the holes, I didn't know how to weld at this point, so for those spots, I got some metal and riveted it all in place, used some seam sealer, and painted everything up. I'd also been wanting some rock sliders, so I figured the cheapest way to go about this, that would make the most sense and make everything look good, was I would get some 3/16 metal that would be bent at a certain point, and I would cut it to fit and bolt it onto the tub. And it covered those rust holes in the Jeep perfectly, and I thought it turned out looking great, and they're still onto the Jeep to this day. Around this time I started getting a lot of other parts randomly that I was finding. This time I got some sliding windows for the Jeep that are kind of hard to find used, way better than zipper windows. Got a light bar off of one of my buddy's uncle's Jeep plow for 25 bucks. And I got a bull bar that was just for free of a bunch of random stuff that I was getting. Once all this happened, I was just super excited. The Jeep turned out great. I was really excited that I was able to actually do all of this stuff. And not too much later, I took a buddy out off-roading to this one spot, and everything was going great, going up this hill climb. And after we finished the hill climb, I'm going down, and I noticed that the gas gauge drops drastically. Like I had a full tank and it just is like quarter of a tank, like nothing. So I was like, okay, something's not right. So I get out, go back, and the gas tank skid plate had been apparently pretty rusted and had broken through, wrapped behind the Jeep back to the bumper, and the gas tank had fallen and it's sitting on the axle. Thankfully, I had put some ratchet straps in the Jeep right before we left, and we were able to fold the gas tank skid plate back into place and ratchet the gas tank up and get back out of there. Once this project was all wrapped up, I had been wanting a lift for the longest time. Really didn't have a lot of money at the time. I really don't have a lot of money now, but I really didn't have a whole lot of money at the time. And buying a new lift, brand new, was kind of a stretch for me, even a rough country lift. Well, I found a rough country lift used, super cheap, and I figured I would buy this and I would, you know, clean it up, get all the rust off of it, paint it, get new bushings and everything, and it would be great. So it was a good experience doing all that, but it definitely didn't even out. I would have probably much better been off getting a brand new lift and not done that. But, you know, lesson learned. In the midst of all this, I was trying to pick out a time to actually go do that, and I decided I wanted to just do something a little different to the bumper, and I decided I wanted to get some more clearance in front of the bumper, so ended up cutting the front of the bumper on either side a good bit off. I just kind of made a little template with a piece of cardboard on one side, transferred it over to the other side, cut it off there. Had a nice little contour to it, but it provided a little more clearance in front of the tire and didn't look too bad for just you know, 5 minutes of cutting, I guess. So next was time for the lift. I was so excited to get this on. My buddy said he'd help me. So glad that I went to him because I still just didn't know a whole lot at the time. He had a lot more tools that would be able to help out, and most importantly, he had a torch that really helped out with some of those bolts. Once we got the lift done, it turned out great. I loved how it looked. 31s are definitely too small for the lift that I had on this, but it was such an awesome, fulfilling experience. Once I finished that, I learned a very valuable lesson on leaf spring shackle torque. They were tightened up way too tight, even to the specifications in the instructions, but it was too stiff and it didn't allow for any movement with the springs at all. So that made for a very, very rough ride going down the highway. Not long after that, it was time to get a winch. Got the winch, got rid of the bull bar. After this, I'd been introduced to a little bit of welding. So I bought the 90 amp Harbor Freight Flux wire welder. Did a couple little projects with it, but I decided to fix a pinch in the exhaust. I had hit something off-roading and pinched the exhaust right around where the oil pan is and pinched the exhaust, so it was restricting flow. So I cut that out, was able to replace that, and then replaced the muffler with a thrush welded muffler. And I really liked how it sounded. But the sound, whatever reason, only lasted about a month. After this, it was just a bunch of random little projects here and there. I was going to go down to a buddy's place to go off-roading. Along the way, my Jeep had broke down. Come to find out, it was an Excel Super Coil that I had replaced, and I was just swapping out a bunch of parts at the time, replaced it with this, and thought it was going to be an upgrade, but ended up crapping out like a month into it. Swapped out an alternator, replaced the valve cover gasket, and painted the cover orange while it was off. When I had been doing that, I accidentally had broken the coolant temperature sensor in the back. When I replaced that, I must have gotten an air bubble in the system. I'd been wanting to add some vents to the hood somehow. And this was a time that I thought maybe this would help it, and it really didn't at all. So I have another video showing how I made my hood vents, but this is when I made the hood vents. After doing that and seeing that it really did nothing for the overheating issue, that's when I drained the system and flushed it and was able to get that air bubble out. Around the same time, figured it'd be a good chance to replace the fan clutch, and that was a tremendous help. I had so much more airflow after replacing that. I got some aluminum corner guards off a buddy, painted those black, put them on. I participated in the world record setting longest Jeep parade. Not long after this, we bought our first house and I have my own garage. The pegboard of the garage was brown at this point, which was one of the first things that had to change. Really needed to brighten the garage up, so I decided to paint everything white. After that, I got my first workbench built, and I just had many more projects coming after this. Lots of painting, adding a box for fluids and spare parts. I got the onboard air added to the Jeep. I've got a video at the very beginning of the channel if you want to go check that out. And it was finally time to ditch those 31s and get some 33s. Got a great deal on them through Tire Rack. Got those on and started to fill out the wheel space just a little bit better. At this point, I went on the first real trail ride, I would say, with our Jeep group. And, you know, I actually trailered my Jeep out at this point, and it really opened my eyes to some real trail riding and showed me the limitations of the Jeep a little better than past experiences. And the first thing I noticed was I needed more traction, and two things that contribute to that are differentials, which I didn't have money to do anything with, and your vehicle's articulation. So I decided at this point to get a little bit more flex, I would try to get some boomerang shackles, which ended up helping a little bit in the meantime. So time went on, I had more projects, more wheeling trips. I had tackled some more frame rot and some other issues. Took a stab at making a sound bar, upgraded my storage box, but most importantly got my first locker and installed that. And it was the front lock. At this point, I had always wanted to, I'd always seen Southington Off-Road Park and was really wanting to go out there, and finally made my first trip out there and had a lot of fun. But at the very end of the day, when I was trying out all the ledges, the last ledge I did for the day, I twisted up my front drive shaft and ended up snapping it in half. So the second day was all two-wheel drive. And that leads us up to the start of the channel. So it was my whole experience up until the channel was a lot of fun. I really did a lot. I did a lot of learning, and I wish I would have done some more filming back then. I mean, I wish I would have started my channel back then. Obviously, I just didn't know enough to do anything. But, you know, if there's any questions you have about anything I did, please drop that down in the comments, ask away. I'm definitely not an expert at anything. But if there's anything, you know, that you might have a question about, I might have experienced this and might be able to at least tell you what not to do, because I definitely find that out. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. I really enjoyed doing this video, going back and looking through all the pictures and writing this up, figuring out how to do this. It got my motivation back to work on the Jeep. The next video is definitely working on the Jeep. I'm already ordering parts for the Jeep. I'm working on the Jeep this winter. We are wheeling next year for sure, one way or the other, but the Jeep is getting worked on over the winter. So if you guys have anything to say, please drop that down in the comments. If this is the first time on the channel, please subscribe, and if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. That's about it for this video, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Spoiler alert, I'm taking those flares off and putting my old ones back on.